Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Achieve More podcast. With me, as always, I have my co-host Michael over at Huddle Card Collection. How you doing, Michael?
Great, Anthony. How are you?
Great, sir. Great to have you with us as always. Guys, I want to remind you that on Michael's channel, every Wednesday evening, they have a live podcast called Collecting Profit, 10 p.m. Eastern time. Stop by and be a part of that. It's really awesome if you're into sports cards, collectibles, sports, eBay, any of those things. Highly recommend it. If you guys are interested in seeing the video format of this podcast, that'll be over on my YouTube channel, which is called Picksburgh. I also do vlogs there with my girlfriend, that you can watch. They're pretty cool. But again, wherever you're finding this, make sure you follow us on Spotify, Apple, or any of those podcasting formats as well for new episodes that come out every single week. Without further ado, we have a really awesome guest with us today. An Amazon best-selling author, actually. We have Stephen Panus. Stephen, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and anything you'd like to share or promote, please feel free.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Anthony and Michael. It's nice to be here. As Anthony mentioned, I'm the author of a book called Walk On. It's a memoir. It's about how my life changed indelibly 4 years ago when my 16-year-old son was killed. He was a passenger in a reckless and senseless car crash. I wrote the book I didn't set out to write a book. I set out to write a goodbye letter to my son. Needed a place to put my feelings. And then in that process, I looked at his little brother one day, Liam, who was 11 when this happened. And I thought, how's he supposed to make it out of here? Even know how to manage this process of grief. I was 52 and I was struggling mightily. So I took him outside and I asked him to bring his buck knife. And he came over we walked across our property and had him walk up to a tree, an old mature tree. And I said, why don't you carve out a swath of bark off this tree? And he obliged. And then he said, now what? I said, now we're going to watch this tree grow new bark. It's going to be different. It's going to look different, but it's going to heal itself. It has that capacity. And like the tree, we have that same capacity. And I'm not going to lie to you. We're going to look different. We're going to feel different. We'll never be the same. But we are going to somehow, some way patch our hearts and find a way to walk on. And from there, I started, I looked back at a tradition I had with my boys, which was writing them morning inspirational messages, quotes and adages, truisms, mostly focused on values that I thought mattered. And the goal was simple. I was trying to impart wisdom and knowledge and kindness into their developing heart, mind, and soul. And I had to revisit all that because when you lose a child suddenly and traumatically, everything you believe in goes up in flames. You don't know who to trust, what to trust. You're kind of waiting for another shoe to drop. And I had to make sense of those words and everything I taught my boys. And in my new capacity in this state of grief. And so I realized not only can this book help Liam, who I dedicated the book to, but when I finished it, I realized maybe this can help other people who are struggling. Grief is just one form of adversity. And it transcends grief. It's certainly about that in this book, but many of the lessons go beyond grief. They could help anyone who's struggling with a financial crisis or a poor health diagnosis, or maybe a relationship has failed and they're down. We all have some form of suffering. And no matter how it happens or when it happens, we need to find a way to walk on.
Yeah.
That was pretty long.
That's amazing, man. No, that was perfect. Yeah, that was an incredible advice, especially with the tree bark and stuff, like very vivid illustration. So I appreciate that. What was it like for you to see that Walk On was selected by Good Morning America as a buzz pick? That had to feel incredible.
Yeah, it felt good knowing that it's just a huge platform, right? And it could get to more and more people. And again, the whole goal is to help others. That was my thought process in deciding to seek out a publisher. All the proceeds go to the Jake Panus Walk-On scholarships. So there's no personal profit in this. This is about helping others, truly. So it was satisfying to see that it was resonating and was received so well.
Yeah, That's awesome. That's really cool that you're not even taking profit from it, and it's something that you're really doing to help other people, which is incredible. That was kind of what inspired Michael and I to even start the podcast, was to really put something out there that could help other people. And that's why you're a perfect guest, is because you have a story that you've put out there into the world, and you're actively helping other people, which is incredible to hear.
That's why we're here.
What
right?
inspired you? 100%. What inspired you to start writing initially? Was it this tragedy, or had you also been an author before this? Like, has this been a hobby of yours, or is it just something that you picked up in your grief?
I've always been a decent writer, but I've never written a book or published anything. I wrote for survival, honestly. Initially, I needed a place to a healthy outlet to put my feelings. I was when this happened, you go through a state of disbelief for a certain period of time. You go through anger and bitterness. There's despair. It took, I think in some regards, my brain, there's a small part of my brain that still won't accept that he's forever gone. I know he's gone, but it's hard to accept. It's a life-altering experience that I wouldn't wish upon any parent. It totally has changed our family trajectory and how we live. And so it was pure survival when I started. And again, it wasn't to write a book. It was just like, I have to get this out, right? Wasn't going to serve me well to keep all these feelings inside, and they're going to come out sideways eventually.
Is there some fear in letting him, I don't know, become independent, become, as a parent, wanting to protect, is there a fear that inside a little bit, or you have to kind of let that go and let him live?
Yeah, there certainly was initially, like when I remember the first time we let him get in a car with somebody else after this, and you kind of swallow hard. Well, one of the things I learned in this is that we all think we have this great control over things that happen in our lives. And this was a lesson for me and my family about how little control we have. Control is it's an illusion. I let Jake go to sleepaway camps, sporting events, friends' houses, vacations with friends, and nothing that had ever happened. So why would I think something was going to happen this time? But it's that illusion of control that we have. And the reality is, you got to live your life. You can't bubbleize it. Certainly as a parent who's lost one child, I'm a little extra sensitive to certain situations, and there's triggers, right? First time we all got back in a car and we're on the same highway driving, wasn't easy. And you're waiting for that proverbial next shoe to drop. You feel like, anything can happen now. That's how you feel. And it took a little while to work through that. To answer it, I think we don't bubbleize Liam. We let him live his life. And I think he's aware of his own mortality through this process, and how special life is.
What first inspired you to actually take this painful experience and bring purpose from it to help other people? Was there a moment where you're just like, I know I have to share this with somebody?
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, we created the Jake Panus Walk-On Scholarship. So there's two currently. And the first was in partnership with Red Cloud Indian School, which is based in Pine Ridge, South Dakota, on the reservation. And that was formed days after Jake died. We knew we didn't need any more flowers. And my wife had the idea that Jake really wanted to make a difference there. He had gone there a year before on a church mission trip, and he came home transformed by the experience. He connected deeply with the children there, that he was teaching life skills, how to read, just have fun with them as well. But he came home transformed and upset and keenly aware of the incongruities and inequalities between how he lived in Fairfield, Connecticut, and how they lived in Pine Ridge, South Dakota. And he wanted to make a difference. 2020 trip was canceled because of COVID. Jake died 2 months later. So we created a scholarship that rewards kids from this one particular area on the reservation called Red Shirt Table, where Jake did the mission work, who attend Red Cloud Indian School and graduate and want a pathway to college, we provide that for them. And we've given out 3 scholarships there in the last 4 years. And about 6 months after Jake died, his goal was to, we created the second scholarship. His goal was to attend the University of South Carolina, follow in my footsteps. And as his father, I felt a responsibility to make sure he got there in spirit, as he intended to get there, as if he was still with us. He had just taken his first practice SAT exam, scored like a 1340 a month before he died. He was locked in on his goal. And so I had received a phone call out of the blue in 2 days before Christmas in 2020 from head football coach Shane Beamer. He'd just been hired. He was 2 weeks on the job. Someone had told him about our tragedy, and he reached out, and it meant a lot. And to myself, to Liam, to my wife, especially at a time when it was completely joyless in our house. We were not excited about Christmas, and we were looking to, do the best we could for Liam, but it was beyond hard. We just wanted to get past all the holidays. So Beamer reached out. We had this connection, and I realized that this is a great way to get Jake there. And I reached out, told him about the idea. He was a former walk-on player himself. He loved it, and we raised the funds, created an endowed scholarship that has awarded 4 scholarships now in 4 years, all great kids, so 7 total. And when I handed out that first scholarship in 2021, in September, was the first time I felt a sense of purpose again. I had lost my purpose when Jake died. And I went down there to award the first scholarship, and I gave a talk to the football team at 7:30 in the morning, and told them a lot about who Jake was and what he stood for and why we created this scholarship. And when I announced it, and the young man, Matthew Bailey, he was the long snapper, when he came up and everyone was, standing and applauding, and he was approaching me, I could see his face and the joy and surprise and elation in his face. I saw Jake, and we embraced, and it was a really special moment. It was the first time since Jake died that I felt like maybe I do have a purpose. And I feel like in a lot of ways, it's Jake just coming through me. Jake's superpower was that he was authentic, and he lifted everybody up everywhere he went and spread joy. And it really felt like I was a vessel, and Jake was just coming through me. And it's given me kind of the only future that I can have with my son when all else is forever gone. The fact that his legacy will endure now in these 2 special places that meant something to him, and he's transforming lives beyond these 2 places as well, means everything. It's, to a bereaved father. So that was the first September 2021 was the first time that I kind of pivoted towards maybe this is the direction I need to go. It felt really good to help another child. That certainly reminded me of Jake, right? These kids, they're all gritty, they're tough, they're walk-on football players are often overlooked. They're scrappy, and they needed to represent some of the characteristics of Jake, which were strong leadership skills, grit, resilience, and they care about their community. And likewise at Pine Ridge, the kids there are first-generation kids. They're neglected. They don't have many of the things that we take for granted. And I know Jake really wanted to help the children there, and now he will forever. And coincidentally, when we named the scholarships, the first one wasn't named the Jake Panus Walk-On Scholarship. It was just the Jake Panus Memorial Scholarship. But when I went out to award it at Pine Ridge, the administrators at the school were asking about the other scholarship, and I was telling them, and they said, wow, walk-on here in Lakota, we believe that when you die, it's not the end point of a linear pathway, that you walk on to the next step in your journey. And I was like, wow, it was kind of like the universe brought it all together and tied it. So we all agreed to rename that one the Walk-On Scholarship, and it's taken on kind of significance and meaning. Walk on for Jake. There's shirts and hats, and it's been widely covered. We had a kid on wearing the shirt 2 weeks ago on Game Day, ESPN's Game Day show from South Carolina, and Pat McAfee made a donation to the scholarship. It's been real meaningful. Marty Smith's been a great supporter, among others. So yeah, that's how it kind of all came together and how it tied together.
What's the connection to the football?
So I went there, big football fan. I worked for the athletic department, and I raised Jake on Gamecock football, and it meant a lot to both of us. And whether he was ever going to walk on or not, he was only 16 when he died. I don't know, but I knew that he would have supported them. He bled garnet and black, and it seemed like that was the best way for me to get him there, in a way that would endure and have special meaning.
What advice do you have for like other parents that might be dealing with a similar loss?
Great question. Be easy on yourself. It's okay to be depressed. There's no shame in that. You just can't stay in that state, but you can be in that state and you're gonna be, because it's just the way it is. It's unnatural and out of the natural order to bury your child. Hold on to hope no matter what, because there are dark days, dark weeks. Lean on your friends, ask for help when you need it, practice self-care, which is really important. Knowing what you're capable of and what you're not capable of, and being easy on yourself. There's some days where you're just not going to want to get out of bed, and that's all right. There's other days where you're not going to want to shower, or you're not going to want to leave the house, and that's all understandable. But grief is an individual journey. My wife, Liam, and I all share this tragedy, but how we cope and how we grieve are three different scenarios. It's a very much an individual process. So don't judge your grief. A lot of people do that, and that's not healthy. Understand that nothing will ever make you feel whole again. You're going to live the rest of your life. It's a life sentence with this hole in your heart. But there are ways to walk on and find meaning and joy again in life. And everyone has to find what that is for themselves. But most of the answers reside within us. That's what I found, is like searching outside for external answers isn't always going to provide it for you. You're going to really soul search on your own. You're compelled to. I was a zombie for the first year. I took 8 weeks off of work. I couldn't function really. I lost weight. I couldn't sleep, didn't have an appetite. It's not for the faint of heart, but there is a pathway out from that hell. And it's different for everyone, but just don't give up hope.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask a question about your former career when you were a sports agent. What was that like? And did you have any cool clients when you were doing that?
Yeah, so it's been a great career journey, very diversified. I started out as a sports publicist and worked for a great mentor in New York City, the late Joey Goldstein. And we had great clients like ESPN and Howard Cosell and Dick Schaap. So I got exposed to some really amazing experiences and people. That was between my junior and senior year. I worked for the athletic department, as I mentioned, from my sophomore to senior year in sports communications. And I knew sports was my love growing up, and this body didn't take me past high school. So I knew that I wanted to find a way to stay in that space. And so sports business was the angle. I ended up going to law school with the intent of becoming a sports agent. I wanted to add another weapon in my arsenal to go with the publicity and the marketing. And I've had a great career. I've represented a Super Bowl champion, a Pro Bowl player, competed in the NFL's Fastest Man contest, winner of Dancing with the Stars, who's won the Indy 500 4 times, tennis superstars. I recently left my job after 13 years this past May and launched my own agency. So I'm kind of back into doing some agent type work, but more in the sports marketing space rather than representing as a certified NFL PA agent or anything like that. So I'm more in marketing, PR, and branding now, and just needed to control my life, control what little I could control. And that was my ability to work from home, be with my family a lot more. But yeah, it's been a pretty amazing career. I got to share a lot of it with Jake, which was really special. He was our firstborn. He loved sports like I did. So I took him to everything. He went to the Indy 500 when he was 5. He was at the Preakness when he was 11. and hanging out. I turned around, I'm like, where's Jake? And Jake was very outgoing. He was an extrovert and he loved crowds, and he had cajoled his way into the exclusive luxury tent and was hanging out with Post Malone, the governor of Maryland. So he had a pretty good time there.
Cool.
He went a year later, he went to the Belmont Stakes when American Pharoah won the Triple Crown and ended the 37-year drought of the Triple Crown streak. So that was really cool. We hung out with Willie Geist and Carson Daly were at our table, and Jake certainly left an impression on both of them and anyone else that he came in contact with.
That's super cool. What had you go down that career path initially? Was it just that, like you said, you weren't able to actually become a professional football player, so you wanted to work closely in that field? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I just grew up loving college football and the game of football, NFL as well. But college was really where my heart was, and I couldn't go past Division III, so I decided to go to a big school, South Carolina, get the Division I experience, but get it from a student perspective. And I feel like by working for the athletic department, I actually got like a double major. I felt like I majored in international studies, but when I wasn't in class and studying, I was working at the athletic department and had a great experience. And I knew that from an early age that if I wasn't going to be able to play, I was going to be working in this somehow, some way.
That's really cool. Any advice to young kids growing up now that might be in the same situation where they might just not be athletically gifted, but they love sports? Any advice to them?
Totally.
As far as following
There's
that?
so much more opportunity today than there was when I got into it. I would say the number one thing is hustle. You need to hustle. You need to knock on doors. You need to work harder than your competition, and you got to want it. But there's so many new areas. There's with all the analytics. There's data opportunities and analyzing all the cool metrics that are studied now and around the sports. There's video, social media, all these things that didn't exist. Teams need all these different niches filled, and leagues and players, are working on their personal branding. So I think if you hustle in anything in life, you're going to be successful. And I think that hustle actually breeds luck. So that's the biggest thing I always tell young people is hustle. And I think this generation, from what I've seen, has been enabled a little bit coming up. And so they're used to things kind of coming easy to them, or it's one swipe and they can get whatever they want. And it's not how it works in the real world. You gotta hustle. You gotta put in hard work. You gotta start on the bottom rung and climb your way up. And you do that through hard work and dedication and commitment.
So being an agent pre-NIL, and now that you see what's happening with NIL, from that, how does that change your perspective in how you approach it now? What's the overall? How does it change it?
Yeah, I'm not that involved in the NLI side because I'm representing professionals, if you will, but I'm certainly in favor of the players earning money. I think that it's long been tilted or imbalanced, you might say. So it's nice to see some balance come to it. I think it's tilted a little too far towards the players, and I think there needs to be some rules to this because it's a little bit the Wild West, where it's being used as a recruiting tool. It's a pay-for-play model, and I'm not sure that's the best thing for college sports. But I do think the players should be compensated, especially the ones who bring a lot to a school. Jalen Milroe at Alabama, who had a great game last night. Yeah. If you're a star and people are wearing your jersey, you deserve it. But I think I think you should earn it, right? And not be just given it because you're an alleged 4 or 5 star recruit coming out of high school, but you haven't proven it at the collegiate level. There's some of those guys that just don't make it, right? But they're given significant money, sometimes 7 figures, just to enroll at a school. I think that's where it needs to be curbed a little bit.
I can't agree with. I can't disagree with you there. I'm not for sure. It does change the landscape. Of the way, and I think to your point, for most people would understand that college football was not as pure as people may want to think it was.
Right. It's just now out in the open, right?
Right.
I know one thing. I wouldn't want to be a college coach. My God, it's so hard now. Not only do you have to recruit annually 18-year-old kids and portal kids, you're re-recruiting your own kids that are already on the roster to stay.
Right.
Because these kids are getting offers because it's the Wild West, and any school can call up their parents behind the scenes and be like, hey, look, if Johnny comes over to here, we'll give him $250,000. And what do you think an 18 or 19 or 20-year-old kid's going to say to that? And I think what happens is then you don't have these loyalties to these schools. And, kids forget that this isn't just a transactional experience, right? And it should be a 40-year decision, not a 4-year. And looking ahead. And so when you do graduate, and maybe you make it to the NFL, but the career in the NFL, the average career is less than 3 years. So when you're done with that, then what? Right. Where do you go? Yeah. Where's home, right? If you've burned bridges at 2 different or 3 different schools and you really don't identify with anyone and the fans feel no connection to you, it makes it tougher to create those opportunities that may otherwise exist if you were a 4 or 5 year starter at one school and you gave everything you had to that school. Believe me, the alumni is going to be a lot more excited to hire you, work with you, and partner with you.
I think NIL has definitely made it has made a let's say, I think people look short this in, like, for instance, to use the game of football as an analogy, a lot of them are looking at it's a 4th and 1 rather than and a short yardage situation rather than a long yardage situation. Where in reality, that I mean, you make a great point there in that this is not it's not just a today decision. What a lot of these kids are doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I have a few segments that we like to do towards the end of each podcast. The first one's called No Dumb Questions. We allow audience members to send in questions for our future guests. This week, the question is, how do I help my friend through a loss? So this is somebody who their friend's dealing with a loss, kind of similar. What advice would you have for them? They don't want to be overbearing, but they, also want to be there.
Great question. Show up, right? We can fake a lot of things in our lives, but you can't fake showing up. So just be there. Don't worry about having to say the right or wrong thing. You don't have to say anything. You just have to be there, support him or her, whoever that friend is. Do things for them that we just kind of, again, take for granted. Grocery shop for them. If they're struggling, they're not leaving the house, go get their groceries. Bring them a meal. Mow their lawn. Snowplow their driveway if it's the wintertime, or shovel their driveway. There's so many things that you can do. Walk their dogs. That when people are down in a very dark place, they feel alone, and the reality is they're not alone. And I think showing up shows them that they're not alone. That I look at everybody now and I see invisible backpacks. We're all carrying some level of pain or suffering. Again, there's degrees. But we're here to help one another, to lift up one another, to connect. And so when someone is down, know that just being there for them can lift them up. It may take days, it may take weeks. Don't give up. Don't ask them what they need, just do it. Because if you ask them, they're going to say, no, I'm good,
Makes a lot of sense.
Last
segment we have is called We Have to Ask, You Do Not Have to Answer. Sometimes it's playful, sometimes it's not. The question we have for you today is, what do you think Jake would think of all of the amazing work that you guys have done in his name?
I think he'd be happy. He, like I said earlier, his superpower was he had the ability to lift everyone up wherever he went. And he was the type of kid who walked into a room and it was a spotlight. He lit it up. So knowing that he's making a difference and inspiring other children to become the best version of themselves, and giving people opportunity and pathways that may not have existed, but for these scholarships, I think would make him very, very happy.
Yeah, it's incredible. Like all of the things that that you're doing right now. I give you all the props in the world. Where can people find the book? I mean, obviously it's available on Amazon, I believe, but is it also local bookstores and all those
Yeah, so
places
it's mostly
as well?
online. It's Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books A Million, Target, and like 30,000 other booksellers. I have a website, stephenpanus.com. There's links there, and there's more information on the scholarships. If you want to book me as a speaker, there's information there, and you can contact me as well. So, stephenpanus.com. If you need more information about the story, Jake or myself, it's all there.
Very good.
Awesome. Appreciate that. Michael, do you have any final questions for Stephen before we let him go today?
Yes, I do. And I mean, it probably should have been asked a while ago, but what was the turning point, or what did you see that, or the decision that came, or something where you where you decided, you know what, I'm not going to be a victim anymore. I'm going to be, I'm going to do my best to go in the other direction. Was there something that happened?
I don't know if it was any like initially one moment or thing that happened. My background, thankfully, was I was raised by great parents who were very inspiring and validated my optimism in life. So I came from that perspective, and I think when you get hit with news like this, it's like getting just completely flattened. And when I hit the ground, I at least had, it was hard, but there was some pliancy there because of the ability to have hope. I didn't know what that meant. I mean, I'd never been to a dark place like this in my life before, and I hope never to go back. But the ability to land on a little bit of optimism, and it was just a glimmer. I think that helped. And I looked at, again, my wife, Kelly, and our son, Liam, and I knew that it was my responsibility as a father to help at least lift everybody up, and encourage us all to, really come together, honor that we're going to deal with this differently, but find a way that we're going to walk on together, stay together, and we all did it. I think it's really an ode to us as a family and our commitment for each other and for life, and to honor Jake.
I appreciate you coming on, man. Apologies about his computer issue there, but again, anything else you'd like to say, closing statements or anything before we let you go today?
Just thank you for the opportunity, Anthony and Michael. I appreciate coming on and helping spread the word about Walk On. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Our pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on, man. We genuinely appreciate this. We say almost every week, the one thing we can't get back is time. So thank you for spending some of it with us. It genuinely means a lot.
Definitely.
Guys, we appreciate you listening to another episode. Please go and get this book. Follow, Stephen on his website as well. And until next week, guys, God bless you. We hope you take it easy. From the city